a contract is basically a statement of work, right? So we have discussed about MSAs, we have discussed about SOWs. Um, when a SOW is signed, it is signed between the client and the vendor. A SOW in turn has a bunch of things, right? What are some of the key things that a statement of work has?
The statement of work is going to have what the project entails, like
Right. Project details,
project details. Yeah,
including delivery, milestones,
the acceptance criteria too.
yes. Uh, yeah, acceptance criteria linked with usually in contracts, acceptance criteria is linked to release of funds, right? Now, there'll also be other elements like the KPIs that need to be maintained, some, you know, any penalties that are applicable. These are all the things that are there in a SAP. There's also something that is called a CR process. CR process stands for change request process, right? So the question that you were trying to work on was, tell me about a situation where contract terms needed to be renegotiated due to project scope changes. What was your approach? The first part is that because it's a client vendor relationship, the statement of work or a contract would have a documented CR process. We need to make sure that the process is followed before we take up any work. Usually, a CR process would have something like an assessment, which identifies what is the cost and timeline shift that is going to happen. Once this assessment is done, this is sent for sign-offs to both the client and the vendor, right? Both of them are going to be required to sign off. Usually the client starts and then the vendor. For it, so there's going to be a set of conversations that, okay, so we're going to be bringing in this change because the business requirement has changed. A lot of times the conversation that will happen is that this change that we are trying to implement, this change, was this not something that was already covered as part of this delivery? Businesses, especially if it is a client vendor relationship, the client might want to say that in some part it was covered in the delivery, and the vendor might have to explain how it is not covered. But wherever that ambiguity or that clarification leads, you then end up finally coming up to a final assessment cost. That cost is signed off by the client and the vendor. And once that sign off happens, is when you have an amendment, and that amendment defines the new project delivery and timelines, right? The amended project delivery and timelines get captured over there. Are you understanding the overall picture of how this would happen when in an organization? We built this out, we started the work, we were going through the work. The client identifies that, hey, you know what? This one element that we didn't think about before also needs to be brought in. All right. It looks like this was not covered in our initial agreement. So obviously the milestone and the timelines that we came up with does not reflect this. We need to do an assessment to understand what is the impact of this new change request. Do an assessment. Okay, it looks like this is going to add another 3 sprints to the work that we are doing, and the cost for that will be this. All right. Client, do you agree? Yes, we agree. Okay, so here's the CR. We need to have that signed off. Vendor signs off. Now we come up with a new delivery timeline and a new milestone. And as long as both parties have agreed, that becomes the standard. Make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, that really simplified it.